Welcome to History Where It Happened. I'm your host, Dick Smith, and today we're going to visit the Southern Vermont Arts Center here in Manchester Center, Vermont. Well, I'd first like to give a little history of this whole area that's really the campus of the Southern Vermont Arts Center. In the 1700s, John Stark, when he went to the Battle of Bennington, when he brought his troops from New Hampshire, he camped right down here at the entrance to the Southern Vermont Arts Center. Why? Because there's streams that go down, there's springs, there's wells, and of course troops need water. And the Equinox Hotel, the Marsh Tavern, was a mile up the road, so he used this as his camp. Then in the 1800s, another significant event happened. Around 1875, Charles F. Orvis of Orvis fame and fly fishing fame, he actually made three ponds into a fish hatchery here, and he used to stock streams in Manchester and outlying towns. Later on, the Vermont Fish and Wildlife took over that function. But then you come to the 1900s, and I'd really like to have the executive director of the Southern Vermont Arts Center, Jennifer Weinstein, give us a history of that. Well, Jen, thanks for spending time with us, but could you give us a little background of, or a little history of the whole Southern Vermont Arts Center campus, and who owns it, and how it was formed, and so on?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the Southern Vermont Artists began in 1922 by a group of about 12 Dorset painters that came together primarily from New York, and they came because they just enjoyed the inspiration of the landscape that we have here in Southern Vermont, and they wanted
the Green Mountain.
Yes, yes, the Green and Taconic, and they fell in love with this area for its inspiration, for its beauty, as I said, and to get away from New York, which is a lot like what happens now as well. So our history is wonderful, and how continuous it has been, and how we're able to carry on our mission, which is to further art and art education in all aspects. And in doing so, these 12 Dorset painters would get together every summer. They started to show their work on the Dorset Green, on the Manchester Green, and when Burton was, before it was an academy, it was a seminary, and they would show it there in the gym. And then in 1950, Dean Fawcett, who was an artist member and became the executive director of the Arts Center for a time, he came upon this opportunity to buy the Webster Estate. And in 1950, we purchased this property, which at that time was over 400 acres. 400? Over 400, yes, that went up part of Equinox Mountain that we're on. And
Hildene is 412.
I know.
I mean, it's equivalent size.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
it's
Oh,
massive.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And this was one of those mansions, like Hildene, like the Wilburton.
Right,
they were all built in and around the same time. So the Yester House was built in 1917, and that, along with the carriage house that's over there, were purchased and then repurposed for galleries. And now the Yester House holds 13 different galleries where we house both and show contemporary and representational art, which was the same as those 12 Dorset painters. There was no specific type of art that they did, and that's why they wanted to keep it open to all different art.
Right. How many acres now are in the...
Now we're probably about 120. We sold approximately 300 acres that were all on the mountain, so we couldn't develop those acreage, and we sold it actually to the Vermont Land Trust. And so they are now...
preserved now.
It's now preserved.
It's now preserved.
So it's preserved.
That's great. Well, how many buildings in total are here? You mentioned the Yester House, you have the carriage house. We have our studios, which have two professional art studios that we can teach anything from plein air art to, because we open up into a wonderful courtyard that's behind both of the studios. And then this building is the Wilson Museum. The Wilson Museum was built in 2000 after a capital campaign that raised close to $10 million.
It was spearheaded by a gentleman named Alex Hoffman, who put his heart and soul into it and gave us this wonderful building that houses right now 2 large contemporary styled galleries that we have in there, both loaned exhibitions and exhibitions of our own permanent collection, of which we have over 200 works of art from various members and students that have donated to the Art Center.
What is the difference then between is there any one type of exhibit that is in the Yester House and not here, or do you have more modern ones here, or?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because the way it has been that the Yester House is our sales gallery, and we will sell anything from contemporary work to representational work, anything that our members will produce or anything that we sometimes have solo shows. Traditionally, and I say traditionally since 2000, in the museum has been only works that are for like looking at. It's not for sale.
On loan or for sale?
Correct.
Yeah, not for sale.
Not for sale. However, as we're seeing our sales increase, we're realizing that we need more space to show art for sale. And so we've decided to open up the museum as a contemporary art sales gallery. So we're going to do both types of exhibitions in the museum. We're going to do both sales for our members, and we're also going to have exhibitions of loaned work as well as of the permanent collection.
Well, that's great. Maybe we can walk up here and get into some other details about the Arkell Pavilion and so on.
Sure.
We use art not only for pretty landscapes and other uses, but art is also a way to portray history. We've always used art to portray generals on horses, for statues, famous battle scenes, and so on, especially during the period when we didn't have photography. But now we use art for history also here in the 20th century. One of the more famous historic events happened about 3 or 4 years ago, if I remember correctly, when there was a tragic death of Trayvon Martin. Turned out he was unarmed, and there was a trial and everything else, and he was wearing a hood and so on. And this artist, Matthew Perry, from the Vermont Arts Exchange, portrayed Trayvon Martin in, I think, a very dramatic way. And this is now here at the Southern Vermont Arts Center, and it's right near the parking lot and so on. So we do have ways of portraying events, even though we're in an age of cameras and television and everything else. A simple statue like this can tell a lot. What is, or could you explain the Arkell? Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes,
Arkell?
yes. The Arkell Pavilion was named after Louise Arkell. She was a big proponent of the performing arts here at the Art Center. So in the 1950s, in the early 1960s, they had an amphitheater, an outdoor amphitheater.
Right here?
Right here. And people would sit out on the lawn. It was on tiered kind of seats that were built into the hill, and performances were had. They actually started performances out of the back of a van, out of the back of a truck. That's how much people just enjoyed listening to live music here. And so eventually Louise kept seeing how more and more people wanted to get involved with the performing arts, and she spearheaded the call to arms to get money to raise, to build, and to cover the amphitheater. So that happened in the mid-1960s, and then in the early 70s, they put walls on it that still to this day slide back and forth.
Right.
So it kind of preserved that open air feeling,
right,
but then allowed us to close it up to use in the winter. And then in 2000, after we had raised so much money for the museum, we were able to use some of the money to build an outdoor lobby for the Arkell Pavilion.
At the right here?
Yes,
yeah.
yes. So as more and more use was being had for that building, I mean, we had fabulous acts there. We had Louis Armstrong played there. The VSO opened there in 1950 when we bought.
I saw Tommy Tune.
Yeah, Tommy Tune was there. I mean, we've had some tremendous acts, including, and this year we're going to have, this Saturday we're having Bob Milne, who is known by the Library of Congress as a national treasure in terms of his recording of ragtime and boogie-woogie music, piano.
Right.
Andy Avery, a local hero, both in bridge and in music, is going to be having a benefit concert.
How can you not come?
I know,
if you live
right?
in Manchester, you have to come.
Absolutely.
Southern
September
Vermont.
13th, that's Andy. It's also going to be benefiting the food cupboard.
Oh, that's great.
It's a wonderful event. And then we're closing our season in the performing arts with Jim Brickman, who's a nationally known piano player. And that's Columbus Day weekend.
Right. That's a wonderful facility. I also heard the West Point Band played. That was just 10 years ago, but it was absolutely fabulous.
It's a wonderful venue. Apparently, it has perfect acoustics. So it works out very well for bands.
I would have no idea. Believe me.
But that's why it's also been the home of MMF, Manchester Music Festival, for over 40 years.
Oh, that's great. We're at the Southern Vermont Arts Center, and I'm with Jen Weinstein. And if you could, Jen, this is amazing. I love this. It's bright, it's colorful. I don't know why it's here or how it got here. Do you have any background? But it is something.
Yes. Well, actually, I was just saying. I mean, to be able to come up close to it and to really take, sight of it, it's beautiful. What it was is it was a horse that was painted by BBA students. Each panel, Burton, yes, sorry. Each panel was painted by a different student, and it represents all different types of art that are in the world. So, you could see Mona Lisa is there, you could see references to the Vatican are here, and Jackson Pollock. So it tries to encompass all the different forms of art, which is fabulous because that's what the Art Center encompasses. And this was bought by, at the time, a board member, Michael Stott. He bought it at auction, and he bought it and placed it in the permanent collection of the Art Center to always be here to represent, hopefully, the connection between us and the community and art.
Oh, that's fabulous. And somehow it all works. I don't know with the color. It starts off light and it comes in dark. But what is the left? I'll put you on the spot here. What's the left foot? What's the left foot? If that's Jackson Pollock, what's the left foot? It looks like a
I'd have to say maybe
Finnish flag at a car racing or something.
I think it's some sort of reference to Peter Max, actually. And Peter was a very involved artist in this area. And so I believe it was a tip to his hat, and to keep it contemporary, as you see, as the legs are all contemporary artists.
Yeah, Peter Max actually had a store here. He for about 2 years. It closed, but I think he's basically out of New York. But
yes, but just like the 12 original artists that came to form SVA, there's something about this area that attracts artists, and I don't want to figure out what it is, but I'm just happy that it does.
And it's so eclectic. It works.
Yes.
It works.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Well, Jen, thanks for asking us into the Yester House, and I've been through here, but there's so many rooms and exhibitions here. I don't know what to point out. If you could just point out a couple of things or describe some of these exhibits, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, currently in this room, this is Gallery 2, and this is all the artwork of Christopher Pierce. Christopher Pierce is a local artist. He's in Cambridge, New York.
Just across the state?
Across the way. And as you can see, he really emphasizes his florals, his portraits, and his landscape plein air work. The colors, just the richness of his artwork, the word that comes to mind for me is impressive. And Chris, not only is he a fabulous artist, but he's a friend of the Arts Center. He gives a workshop every year that's well attended. It's just wonderful to have artists like Chris being members here at the Arts Center. And this is a bit unusual because this is a very large gallery, of which the Yester House holds 13 varying in size galleries. This is our largest. So to have a solo in this gallery really shows your importance. And now, as we leave the Gallery 2, we can go into some of the other galleries. And the rest of this is our summer members show, our summer members exhibition. Every year we have 2 exhibitions in which our members are guaranteed having artwork. The summer members exhibition and the winter members exhibition. The summer members lasts a little bit longer because this is the heart of our season. Our season is really May until October, and August until Columbus Day is really the sweet part. And so that's why we allowed to have this exhibition open much longer. So it's probably about double what some others are.
So if someone joins the Southern Vermont Arts Center as a member,
yes,
they can put in
as an artist member.
As an
we
artist
have
member.
memberships. We have memberships that go from an individual member until donors who give thousands of dollars. But as an artist member, which is a specific category, then you have the right to submit up to 2 pieces of work, and you're guaranteed 1 to go into each of the summer and the winter members exhibition.
I love the variety here. With here's a photography.
Yes.
Here's a street scene.
Yes.
There's someone who forgot to put her shirt on. There's
yes.
a tree.
And you can see just from this, this room alone, you can see that you have everything from people who are just beginning to do artwork to professionals who are selling artwork for $32,000. And this professional happens to be Arthur Jones, who is our longest member. He actually was a member here at the Arts Center since 1943, since before we even bought the Yester House.
Well known. He lives in Dorset.
Yes, he does. And he taught classes here. He was I believe he was on the board. He was very important in terms of the Arts Center's growth in its early years.
Well, Jen, that was absolutely fabulous. That's quite a thing.
Glad you enjoyed it.
I had no idea there was 13 galleries there. But I have one last little request here. Driving up, I've seen some sculptures down there.
Oh, yes.
And I wonder if you could take a couple of minutes and just explain what they are. I think a lot of people come up here and they look at it and they're not sure, including me. And if you could spend just a couple of seconds down there, I'd really love it.
Oh, I'd love to.
Let's go. Well, we're now on the lower meadow of the Southern Vermont Arts Center here in Manchester. And I'm with Jen Weinstein, and I would just like you to give me a little brief explanation of what this sculptor is, or anything you know about it would be helpful.
I know.
I mean, this
Isn't it incredible?
This is so visible when you come in, and it raises so many questions.
Absolutely. It is. I will say it's the sculpture that I probably get the most questions about. It was donated by Ken Olin. So he's probably the most famous artist that we have, and this is the one sculpture that everybody's so curious about. And ironically, it's also the one sculpture that most kids jump on and play with. But it's supposed to be an accessible piece of art, and
it's fun. I mean,
it absolutely is. And Ken Olin is a famous contemporary artist, and so he brought his talents through sculpture to the Arts Center. So we're grateful. He was a Bennington County. Actually Bennington Town artist. That's where he would escape from New York, and he came in the 60s.
I was just going to ask that, where he's from and everything. Oh, that's terrific. Well, it's amazing echo. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, just
yep.
Just whatever.
Oh, it's fabulous.
What about this field here? It looks like there's paths, and then you have that's been up there forever. Sculpted.
Oh yes, the paper clips. Well, we have sculpture here on the lower meadow certainly since the early 70s, which is when the paper clips was installed, and we had made a concerted effort to leave the meadow open exactly for having large sculpture installations. And through the years, we've had a number of them. This Ken Nolan's came in the early 90s. And we have the Muse that came just 5 years ago.
Right.
And we also have a sculpture from Pat Music, who's another contemporary artist who's local to the area and a member. And what we've done now that we've collected all of these sculptures is created a serpentine path that people can walk. It was generously donated, the path plans, by Gordon Hayward, a famous garden designer out of Saxton's River, Putney area. He came over and he created these paths that we just mow. So it's wonderfully easy to maintain. It's incredibly accessible for anybody who wants to come in the winter, in the summer, because it's snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, and what's fabulous about it is it connects throughout our entire campus. So this will take you all the way up through our botany trail, back up behind the Arkell, behind the museum, and then connects up into the trails that go into Equinox Pond.
Oh, that's
So
right, along the
it's beautiful.
Flatlander Trail there and everything.
Yes.
That is great, because so many people just come up here, drive
Yes.
past, and don't realize that they can get out, or they can start up in the parking lot and come down here and just explore, I guess,
Yeah.
is the reason.
Absolutely.
Well, Jen, that's great. I appreciate your spending the time.
Well, welcome. It was wonderful.
I hope everyone enjoyed that episode, and we'll see you next time.